All right, so the rest of the semester, if we look at this, we have our product turn-in. We have our drone. That's what I'm going to start going over today. And then we'll have a demo reel. Those are our remaining 3 assignments that we'll be turning in. And then we also have a final exam. That'll be a one-day thing. So we have, it's hard to see because the board is there, but we have 11 classes before the semester is done. So after today, it'll be 10. So we basically have the last day is just going to be a turn-in day. The day before that, we'll do our final exam. And then the rest of that time, we'll be working on the drone and the other stuff, getting that stuff set up. So it's going to come pretty quick. Thanksgiving week, we're here on the Monday. We're not here the rest of the week. So just stuff to be aware of. So I have my reference images for my drone somewhere inside here. I think it's all the way on the bottom. There it is, drone pics. So this is going to be our next assignment, is to model a drone-like object vehicle. It needs to have propellers that are showing. That way we can actually show these things animating. That's one of the things we want to be able to do. I don't really care what the shape of your drone is as long as it looks realistic. Just like our product. The product's very simple. We have some very basic shapes. Drones are pretty much the same thing, but they're very basic shapes kind of all over the place. You put them together and it looks like more of an advanced shape. Even something like this, if you look at your product, that's basically like the product shape that we would have, but then it has stuff like this little cutout right there, which is a little bit more of an advanced shape. The rest of this, where all these lines and numbers and all that, that's all texture. So all of that stuff we'll be able to do as well, but we're going to do those in a different fashion. Same thing with this kind of shape here. That's just a more advanced kind of shape cutout that they have. Definitely doable. Some things to consider when you're doing your drone is the functionality of everything. So this one here, if we were to look at those pieces, I'm not sure specifically why they have it set up like this. Definitely those propellers could spin around, but it also looks like they would be able to rotate like up and down for some reason. Maybe that's how they're imagining it would control its flight by, rotating some of these upwards. I'm not 100% sure. So we want to keep that in mind. Stuff like this propeller, I don't know if this is a real drone, but it looks like this thing would actually intersect with that. It looks like this blade would like slice right into the drone, making it useless. These blades that are kind of at an angle here, we can definitely do stuff like that. When we do our animation and all that, it just becomes more difficult when you start modeling things and trying to get them lined up on an angle. Again, definitely doable, but just stuff to keep in mind. Claws are kind of a nice touch here. I'm not sure what exactly the claws would do, except look neat.
It looks like a bomb diffuser.
It does. Just throw the drone at it and it'll diffuse the bomb. This is more along the lines of what we're going to be going with. Just a standard drone, 4 propellers on it. I'm looking at symmetry when I do these things. If you have something that's very symmetrical, you can make those look complex a lot quicker. So if I have this, I basically have symmetry going, front to back. And if this was square in the center, I'd have symmetry going left and right as well. Okay, so it'd be like 4 exact pieces. This one has a camera. You don't need to have a camera. It's a nice addition. They look cool when you add, those kinds of things to it, but definitely not needed. The controller down here, again, is a nice touch, something that adds detail to your scene, making it feel like it is an actual product versus just having the drone there. And then this is, again, kind of like this, along the same lines as the one that I'm going to go through. All right. Cool. So I have my images. I'm going to toss these over onto that screen. I'm going to make my folders. P drive, there. There's my drone folder. So I'm just going to make a scenes folder, images. All right, that should be good enough for now. So to start modeling this, I want to do as little work as possible to be able to see what the end result is going to look like. Our product was pretty simple. We drew a curve, or we started with a basic shape, and then we were able to very quickly see what the whole product would look like. With this, there is a lot of shape happening to this. and I don't want to have to do it for this leg and this leg and this leg and that leg. I want to do it for one and have that detail copied to all the other ones, okay? So I'm going to start off with a cube. You could start off with a sphere, you could start off with a cylinder. I'm going to start with a cube because it's the most basic shape. And what I'm doing is I'm thinking about what this would look like as just the body of it, just that main chunk, the center of that drone. Okay, and again, I'm going with a very basic drone shape. This might be your first time modeling something like this. It can get very complex and crazy very quickly. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to turn on my lines here so I can see them. And I want to cut this into where I want my symmetry to be happening, okay? So I'm going to add 2 divisions here, 2 divisions there, and 2 divisions there. So if I look at this, you can see very easily like where the sections are that will be copied and symmetried. I'm even going to take the height and symmetry this. Even though if I look at my picture, even though if I were to look at this area here is a lot chunkier, and it's very the arms of this or the legs of this are very close to the top of that. I can work in this super symmetrical way where everything is symmetrical, and then later on start removing the symmetry and getting into more of an isolated look. For instance, if I'm doing a character, typically I'm going to do left and right symmetry of the face as I start to model the character. At some point, I'm going to remove the symmetry and lock it in and then start putting in specific details to one side of the face or the other. Same thing here. Okay. So I'm going to start with this. I'm going to hit C on it so I can then edit the points. Now I'm going to go through and just start deleting stuff that I don't want. Okay, which is basically going to be everything except for 3 squares. This. Oops, I want that. Yeah. No, I don't. Sorry, I don't want this. Okay. So now I just have these 3 squares selected. I'm going to delete that. Whenever we do symmetry, we have to make sure that that center line, wherever we're making the symmetry happen, never moves. So this area here, I can never grab any of these points and move it away from that area because then it won't be symmetrical. Okay, it'll break the symmetry. This way is a no, this way is a no. If I were to move this up and down, that point is fine because there's no vertically connecting point that's going to be affecting that. Same thing here. I can move this one up or down because it'll move its partner up and down. I can move it back and forward, but I can't move it this way because it'll break the symmetry. Okay, so now let's set up the symmetry. Under, not that menu, this one, there's a symmetry button. So I'm going to hold down Alt, click that, and you'll see symmetry here and cube. And you'll see that it automatically symmetriized it. I think that's a word. Now this thing has very few options. Mirror plane, like which direction are we making its symmetry? I can switch it to this way. I can switch it to that way. I'm going to start off with this one, so I have that piece. And then I'm going to add another symmetry. And there's that side. And then I'm going to add another symmetry. And this one will go into not that direction, not that direction, that direction. There we go. Okay. So now the idea with this is I have this one cube. If I modify anything on this, it should affect everything else. Let's try it out. There we go. Click this point. Okay, so I'm not grabbing all the points, I'm just grabbing those individual ones. Okay, now this is what I was talking about moving it away from those lines of symmetry, is that if I do that, it'll break the symmetry and now we have a big hole. So some of these points I can't move vertically, where some of the points, like this one, I can move this way. I can't move it that way because it'll break. I can't move it this way because it'll break. This one here, I can't move it this way because it breaks. I can't move it this way because it'll break. But this one I can move up and down. So you'll kind of see that as you're going. Basically, if you kind of avoid, major movements of that center line here and there, then you should be good. Okay. Now, if I need this to be a little bit longer, I can still do that. That's not going to hurt anything. And if I grab these ones, I can still grab these and slide these over. Notice every time I'm grabbing the arrows, I'm not just clicking and dragging because that will cause a mess. Okay, grab the arrow, drag it. If you're not sure, click on one point drag that one point and then see if it's working that way. Okay, so far this seems like it's still symmetried. It still looks like pretty good. I'm going to give this more of like a, I think like a Whopper used to come in these containers like that, right? Like that kind of shape. All right, that's cool.
Big Macs still do.
Big Macs, there we go. I don't eat much fast food. Cool. So that's like the main body, like where the motor and everything else, or the computer logic board, that's where everything in there is stored, okay? So now we need to pull some arms out of this. So if I needed to add divisions, what are some of the tools that you would use to add divisions? We could use bevel, right? Loop cut, yep. So we can do, oh, and extrude, yep. So we're going to use extrude. I need to use loop path cut first, okay? And this is going to define where I have those things being pulled out from. So I want this to be pulled out from this corner. If I went here and tried to pull it out, there's no divisions there. So I'm going to add some loop path. This will add the divisions in the spot where I want to pull that arm out of. I'm going to add a little line going this way. There we go. And I'm going to pull it out of, oops, not that area. I'm going to pull it out of this whole thing. I'm not going to put that line there, okay? So I'm going to go to faces. I'm going to grab maybe just these two, I think. Yes, that's good. Go to extrude, and I'm going to drag this out. Okay. Now as I drag it, some options that I want to be aware of. Number one, this maximum angle is typically defaulted to 90. If it's not 90 or it's some other number, there we go. You might get this, where the pieces basically are broken off. It thinks these are two separate faces. It's not keeping them connected. So typically this max angle you have to adjust in order to make sure they stay together. The other thing is this preserve groups. If that's off, it won't preserve the groups no matter what that max angle is. Okay. Now that looks weird being that far out. I'm going to retract a lot of that. Maybe like this. That should be good. Okay, so it's like barely there. Then I'm going to switch to my move tool and then just move it out and then move that out. Okay, so now you can see where I'm getting this drone arm shape. Now, the further I drag this, obviously the longer those arms are going to be. And I'm then looking at, when I look at my images, I'm looking at proportions for these kinds of things. So here's the main body, here's the arms coming out. Where are those arms going to be at? One of the things with drones, typically they have to be very light in order to fly. And typically the wing propellers have to be pretty long in order to get enough speed to push themselves off the ground. Okay? So the bigger these are, the longer I can make those propellers, but the weirder the proportions might be. As I drag this in like that, you know, I don't have a lot of room for a propeller because it's right by that center line. If I have two propellers and they are, you know, that close, that might cause some reaction to them. So I have to make sure they're far enough apart where as they spin around, they're not colliding. So I'm going to go with something like that. That feels like a good proportion to go with, okay? Now I'm not moving this up because that breaks my symmetry, and I'm not moving this down because then it'll intersect, and that's kind of weird. So I'm going to leave it about there. I'm going to switch to my points, and then I'm going to start doing some housekeeping. Anytime we do anything round, think of a cylinder. A cylinder has the points kind of going around the cylinder like that. Even if it was 6 divisions, you would still have this kind of like hexagon shape. These points right here, I'm trying to maintain that eventually this will be perfectly round, okay? So this should be exactly like a cylinder on that side. So I'm going to start grabbing some of these points, oops, and starting to move them to create that cylinder shape. Okay, and notice how I'm just grabbing the arrows, not moving anything up or down. I also want to maintain some division right down the middle here, so I don't want this one being off to the side. There we go. I'll grab this one, do the same thing. Oops, I accidentally moved that up. There we go. All right, so that's pretty good there. I'm going to pull this one forward some and grab the wrong handle. All right, so that's pretty good. This one needs to come out. That can't be like tucked in like that. That looks wrong. pull that out. There we go. Now you don't want to rush any of the stages as you model this. If I were to have left that point tucked in there, and I start adding more points, every new point I add is going to also be following that same contour and staying tucked in. So then when I want to fix it an hour later, I have to go back and edit a bunch of points, not just the one. Okay? So you want to make sure all the points are where you want them before you move on to the next stage. Now this is looking pretty good. Let's look inside the drone though real quick and see what it looks like. So in here, when I did that extrude, it actually gave me new faces, okay? So here's a face, I extruded it out. There's some faces that are at the bottom of this. Now, it doesn't show from here. We don't notice anything different. But if I go to my very top symmetry, I hold down Alt, I add my subdivision surface, now I'm going to notice it, okay? Because now it's treating those as two separate pieces, rounding them off, and then we get, you know, this madness. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to go to my faces, and then I'm just going to go inside that piece. Get in. There we go. It takes a second to get there, but I'm just going to grab the faces and just delete them. Now I might also notice, I can kind of tell already that I probably did move this a little bit, like a smidgy bit. Yep, you can see how it's moved just slightly up. Okay, now we'll watch this again as I click this. I hold Alt and I click that. Okay, you can see there's a little bit thicker line right there. And if I turn my wireframe off, you can actually see like a creasing line right at that edge. Okay, we shouldn't. It should flow nicely from one side to the other. So I have to fix that. So I'm not going to delete this time. I'm just going to turn the checkbox off. And most of the time I'm going to work like this, and then when I want to preview it, I'll turn that on. And when I'm done previewing, I turn it off. All right, so I need to get that lined up straight. So I'm going to middle click, go into this front view or right view, middle click again. And then I'm going to grab all the points down the middle. Okay. I know what this is going to do, but I'm going to make this a lot more exaggerated for your benefit. So pretend it's like that, pretend it's like that. Okay. So way off, if you want to see what it looks like that. Ugh. So I'm going to grab my marquee. I'm going to make sure that I don't have only visible selected, and then I'm going to marquee all those points. Then I'm going to go to my scale tool, grab just this one, start scaling it, and hold Shift. Now they're perfectly flat. Okay. Now I do have a space between them because I scaled them up here, and their line of symmetry is there, so it's like flipping it over this imaginary line. So now I have to move this so it's perfectly flat on that grid. So I'm going to use my grid snap, enable snapping, work plane snap, and grid line snap. All right, that didn't do it. Let's turn grid point snap on. Let's zoom in. Sometimes it's just stupid and it wants me to zoom in. There we go. So that seems to have snapped. And so now if I turn this on, I click everything off. You can see how nicely smooth that is versus what we had a second ago. Turn that off again, back to this, okay? Now that's the same for this edge right here. So if I accidentally move this away, we'll have an opening. I'll need to snap it so that it's realigned. And the same thing for this one. If this edge gets off kilter, I need to snap it back to where it was. Turn my snap off, I don't want that in. Okay, so that's the start of this. So now I can start adding some other divisions here. Some of these things I want to keep as one part. So if we were to look at this specific drone, where'd you go? There you are. This specific drone, this body is here, these little arms are there. It looks like those are part of it, and then attached to those, attached to separate pieces, are these other pieces that would go in the middle. It looks like maybe they kind of rotate or something, whereas the DJI one, this is all one piece. So the main body goes into these things, which go into this. Okay, so that's how I'm building this. So depending on your specific drone type, your end of this might end right here, and you might have a separate piece for this. If that's the case, you would have a separate symmetry node for these pieces and a separate symmetry node for the body pieces. Okay, so I'm going to imagine this is all one piece going out to where the propellers would be. And I'm going to grab these faces here. I'm going to go to extrude again, and I'm going to extrude this outward. Now I'm running into the same issue where it's going upwards. That's not a huge deal. I just switch back. It actually gives me the opportunity to delete those faces. And then I can go back to these and then snap those into alignment after I, there we go, scale it down. And I'm using my hotkey, so you can't see me clicking the snapping button, but I did hit the snapping button. So that's that. Cool, so that works. I'm going to adjust this one. All right, so anytime we do any shape, break it down to what it should look like. If I look at any cylinder, and I'll pull this over here so we can see it. This is a pretty smoothed out cylinder because it has a lot of divisions going around it. If I'm trying to create this shape into a cylinder, because that's where my motor is going to be housed, and that should be round because your motor is typically round. Let's say I dumb this down to about 6 divisions. You can see how blocky it is, but you can still see that round shape in there. I need to have this shape be here. Like I want this to look like that. So I'm going to jump to my top view because it's going to be easier to see. I'm going to marquee, and I'm just going to marquee these points, pull them out here, marquee these points, pull them back there like this. It looks like I'm short a couple points, right? Like I should have, if we look at this one, what? I hate when it does that. Don't show it like that. Just get to see. There we go. Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I still have 6, but I really can't add anything right here, right? I can't like pull these points where they should be. It'll look weird. So I'm going to add another loop right about there. And it doesn't matter exactly where it's at. I just need to get it about in the same spot, so then I could do that. And then that. Okay. Now, if I want to get this accurate, I can actually just take my cylinder, slide it over here. And now this is going to take some imagination, but if I just click on my shape, click on my points, and I start to line up one of these rows with one of those rows, it'll make it a lot easier to get that exactly shaped like that. And I think I want to rotate this cylinder a little bit too. Okay, anything that can help, definitely use those resources. So I think something like that would be more in line with how it should be. All right, so now let me just move these points back into here, these points over there, these points over here. Points there. That. Come on. All right, I'm going to tweak this a little bit. That would line up a lot better. It didn't. All right. All right, it's close. Good enough. Okay. I also want to make sure that that point in the center is also lined up. So let's click back there. I don't want that one there. I'm just nudging these based on what I think it should be. And this is going to be here. And this needs to be there. That feels a lot more rounded. And then the spacing here I'm also looking at because I want all of these to be about the same as well. Okay, so close right there and right there. All right, so that feels good. That feels more rounded shaped. Okay, all right, that should work. All right, so there is the main part of that. Now, if I turn this on again, we're going to see that we lose a lot of that shape. Cinema is trying to keep everything nice and smooth from one shape to the other. So just like our product, we're going to end up with these spots where we just kind of like lose that shape. So now this is where we can start adding more divisions to kind of hold shapes. So I want this to come out here and then make it feel like it's going straight, and then we have this like bulbous round shape at the end of it, like very drastic kind of surface change. So if I add a division right about there, that will help keep this shape. If I come back here and add a division about there, that will help keep that shape. So now we should have these smooth shapes mixed in with these harder shapes. And if I turn this back on, that's what we're getting. Okay, so now we have the body, we have this crisp edge, comes out, a bulbousy area. I think I want to make that bulbous area a bit bigger. So I'm just going to grab these, and I'm just going to make these a little bit more drastic. I think I'm going to pull all of these a little bit further that way. And then you will get to go over there. All right, that should be good enough. Cool. And then we'll turn that back on, and that looks obviously a lot more drastic of a change, which I like. All right, so as far as the top and bottom, I think that's pretty good. Okay, like I don't think I'm going to do anything substantially different to the top here that I couldn't just do to the bottom, or that I would want on the bottom as well. So I'm going to take my first level of symmetry, and I'm going to hit C on it to lock that level in. Okay, so what that does is it actually takes this cube, and then whatever symmetry was there, it's actually baked in that symmetry. So if I turn off all of these, now that's one piece. So it's no longer the top I'm editing. Now I can edit the top or the bottom. And the reason for that is I may want to go into my points for the cube, grab them, and lift them up, because typically drones have these things a little bit higher. And then that would symmetry to that, which would symmetry to this, which would smooth out into that. Okay. Now I do want to check. I'm going to click on my point. I'm going to click off. I'm going to click. I do want to just move this and verify, yep, it's still there. It's still connected. Okay. If it didn't connect, I would use my weld tool to weld stuff together. Like over here, if these split, and then I wanted to attach them after I symmetry them, I can just grab the point and use weld and just drag the one point onto the other, and they'll weld together. Okay, so now I'm going to add a little bit more shape to this. So I'm going to go to my faces. I'm going to grab these faces here. Oops, turn my smooth off. There we go. I'm going to go to my extrude and extrude this down. Go to scale, scale that down. And this drone is going to use the motors as its stand. So think of like if your drone was sitting on the ground, it has to sit on something, right? So you can't just have it sit on the bottom of that. So you'll see like stuff like this where they have the legs kind of coming out for that. Some drones will have a stand, like this DJI has a stand, a separate stand that would go there because you'd have a camera. This one is not going to be that. This one's going to have these little legs that come down. So let's turn that off. All right, do I like the spiky? I don't know. I think I want to push this back up. And then I'm going to extrude it again from there. Now this is getting kind of funky if you look at the shape of it. So I'm going to go to the points and then just start tweaking the points a little bit just to keep this round shape. Because again, if I don't fix it now, I'm going to run into issues later. All right, so that looks pretty good. Back to faces, back to extrude. And now I'm going to extrude this down a smidge and then just move it down the rest of the way. And this is going to create more of an abrupt change right here. So we have this smooth shape that's going to basically stop there, and then we'll have this like spike that will go down. Like that. Okay, a little bit more abrupt, so I'm just going to add an edge loop right there, an edge loop right there. I could use a bevel too, but I use edge loops. There we go. Okay, now these pointy ends don't really make sense, so I need to give them a little bit more definition. So I'm going to go back to my cube, make sure I'm editing the right one, make sure I'm in edge mode. There we go. All right, so now they have a little bit more shape to them. If we go back to before I did that and look at them, they're like really pointy and really, they feel like stretched out. They don't feel like they're, produced. As I add those divisions in there, it gives it more of a manufactured look, which is what we're after. You're so close. There we go. So that feels like something that you would actually buy. All right, and even the top of this, I think I want to add some, shape to this too. Let me turn that off. I'm going to extrude inner to bring that in. I'm going to extrude it down. And then this is where like the motor would sit in. I'll also scale that in a bit. There we go. Now, a motor needs to sit in this spot, so I'm going to create a cylinder. Go into my top view, move it over, and then I'm going to need to adjust all those points to get it lined up right. Shading. Let's move this up so we can see it. Let's do shading with lines. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go to my cube now, and you can see if I was to put this motor piece, which is right here, into this area, it would look very cheap because it just doesn't look like it fits. Even with this smoothed out, you can see it's like a wonky kind of shape. Okay, even though I spent some time kind of tweaking it, you're always going to have to go back and tweak these shapes more. So you stay on, you go off. There you go. So I'm going to go back to my points. I'm going to go back to hidden lines. There we go. Maybe just lines. I'll leave it at hidden. The hidden ones don't show the ones below it, which I don't think I need. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start moving these points so that they're a lot closer to where that shape is. And also trying to make them evenly spaced between these two. That, these. Now I might screw up part of this, and that's fine. I'll just have to go back and tweak that shape. All right, so let's turn that on now, and you can already tell that's a lot better fit. Right? That doesn't feel like a wonky shape. That feels like it's all, synced in there. That's pretty good. So I'll make this a little bit thinner here just to test it. Looks good. All right. So that feels good. I don't see a huge amount of change I need to do on that. Everything feels nice and smooth. So I'm looking at this from different angles, trying to see if I see any points that look weird. This is what a weird point would look like. If I had one of these points, and I'm just going to move it really close to that one. Okay, so you can definitely tell based on the highlight, it looks like there's a smudge or it looks like there's a dent or something in there. Where on this side, if we look at it, it's nice and smooth. Where that side, we have this like weird, sharp highlight. So then I would know something's going on, click on this, turn my subdivision off. Oops, that's the point that's bad. He needs to be back in alignment. I'm going to pull those a little bit further away from this too. That would be kind of neat. That looks good. Let's see, some other stuff I could add to this. Let's go to the main body here, and I'll just grab some of these faces there. Actually, I need to add some edge loops. So I'm going to avoid adding any edge loops that are going to go down the arm's length, because if you look, it's going to add more divisions to that, which will cause some other stuff to happen. So I'm just going to add some divisions right here. Then I can go into the faces and grab these. And then I can go to extrude and then just extrude that up. And then we'll have the same issue if I go on the inside. It's hard to tell. Let me turn off my symmetry so you can see it. But as I extruded that, I got a face on this piece and a face on this piece that have to be deleted, so that when they do symmetry up, that there's a nice opening there. Same thing here, and then subdivision. You can see how now we have this like little body area for the drone, whatever would be up there. If I want a little bit more shape to it, turn my subdivision off, go into the points, and then start tweaking what I want that shape to be. So I'm just going to pull those back, and I'm going to go to the other side. hold them this way. Oops. Maybe I'll take these ones here and just push these down some. That would be good. Maybe add an edge loop. And now our drone has just a little bit more shape to it. You don't want them to look too plain. It looks nice and smooth. I think we can probably add another division right around the base of that. Cube lines right about there. And that will hold that shape a little bit better. Okay, if we had a battery pack down here, we could do the same thing. Sometimes you'll see the arms have a little bit of detail on them. So if I jump over here, I can add divisions all the way up and down here. That's no problem. It's going this way that I really don't want to add any divisions this way. I'll do it just so you can see what's going to happen. So the second I do that, I add my subdivisions. Now I'm back to this like wonky shape where I have these like crispy edges on the inside. And that doesn't look very good. So I'm going to add some divisions here, 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 and here, and there. And then I'm going to go into my faces and just add some shape to it. I'm going to use the edge loop selection. So I think these two might be cool spots to do this in. MW, come on. I'm going to extrude inner. And then I'm going to maybe extrude inner again. And this is just trying stuff out. I don't know what the results are going to be. I'm just kind of like, let's see. And if I don't like it, I'll just undo it. I'll extrude that, and then I'll extrude it again. So I did 2 extrude inners, and then 2 extrudes outward. Put this on, and then now I have those little bands there. And that looks kind of cool. It looks like a little piece of design, or it looks a little piece where the arms would attach. It's kind of neat. It looks like I am getting a little bit of a dip in here. If I don't mind it, I can leave it. But if I do want to change that, obviously I just go back to this, go back to my points, go back to my marqueing. And this is where that only visible comes in handy, because if I just marquee these, I'm not selecting the ones on the bottom, just those. And then I can scoot that up. Oops, I missed a couple. And a couple there. There we go. Yeah, it's kind of like tucking in here. That's kind of weird. Let's fix that. All right, turn that back on. All right, that's cool. Other stuff I may want to do the same way that I did those other extrusions. I'm going to go into these bands here, so I'm just going to add an extra little loop here, there, let's say. Let's go to select loop, this one and that one. I do them on the top too. I'm just going to do it here so you can see it. So this way I'm going to extrude inner again. Now this just sets up that, basically it's like a bevel, okay? I'm putting in the bevel right here, and then I'm going to extrude this down and then extrude it down again. So it's just adding these extra divisions along the way so that when I do turn this on, it holds that shape better. So now we have these kind of like ribs that are inside it. Now I'll undo that just so you can see the divisions. There we go. So I'm going to go back to these faces, and I'm going to do it without any of those divisions in there. So I just do this. And then if I smooth it, they're basically going to be there, but they're going to be very rounded. It doesn't feel produced. It doesn't feel like a hard surface item. It just feels too soft. But I can go into the cube. That's the hard part, remembering to keep clicking the same thing. And then grab this, grab this, grab this. So anywhere we have these big transitions, and then just adding a bevel to that, a couple more subdivisions, and then turning it on, and then I'll get more of that manufactured, hard-ribbed look. Okay. Now the last thing I'm going to show is after I save this. Drone scenes. I like to preview things kind of along the way. So the detail here is nice, but it's very difficult to see on the object itself. So typically I will make a luminance texture, and I will do ambient occlusion. Let me drop this on here. All right, so we're not seeing anything in the viewport, but when I render this, there we go, we should see some of that detail kind of popping out. If I also put this onto my color, so I'm just going to copy this, going to paste it. It's kind of washed it out a bit. Let's go to the luminance one and turn that down. There we go. I'm just going to try to find a good value to put in here. What I'm looking for is just something that'll give me a really good indicator that, you know, this is working pretty decently. Let me take the ray length down to like 20. I think that'll darken it up some, and then pull this up. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So now I'm starting to see some of that detail a lot better than I was, you know, way back here. I can see the crispness of these edges, and that's kind of what I'm looking for when I model stuff. Some things will kind of pop out a little bit better. This looks a little bit too flat. It doesn't look rounded, so I want to correct that. This looks like it bulges down and then comes up. I want to look at that, okay? That looks nice and smooth. That's fine. This is a little bit too soft of a transition here, so I want to crisp that. Yeah, everything else looks fine. Just those couple items that I want to go back and adjust, okay? So typically I'll have that material on here. And you can always delete it if you don't want to use it, and then just, you know, drop it on there when you're ready. We should be able to also, if we click on that. Nope, I'm thinking of something else. Never mind. Just delete it. And then when we're ready, drop it on. You can render it out. Okay, so that should be a good first step to getting your drone started. I really don't like how thick these are. I think I'm just going to, just real quick, just soften that. I think these are just too chunky for this scene. I'm going to go into lines so I can see it all. You know, I missed some stuff. And all I'm going to do is just scale those down so that they're not like that. There we go. So I think that's everything. Oops, I missed one point there. Go to my scale, scale it down this way, scale it down this way, that way, do a little rotation. I may have just like janked this whole thing up, but we'll see. All right, we'll just smooth it out and let's just take a look and see if that looks any better than we had. Object mode, click off. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. I still need to tweak it so I don't get these like stretching parts. I'm just going to undo that, and I'll redo that maybe a different way. Maybe I'll delete stuff and then do that. I don't know. Cool. So that'll be the first step. So once you're done with your product, you can start getting a reference for this and then starting to work on that drone. The end result of this, we'll do an animation and a still image. We'll be going into KeyShot for that. So like I mentioned before, KeyShot's on the school computers. You don't have it at home. So the quicker you can get into that, the easier you'll have a time getting into KeyShot and getting all the other stuff running. cool questions on this yet? No? If you were going to do 8 propellers, the concept would be the same. You just have to rework out how you do your symmetry. You might only do symmetry left and right. You may not do symmetry in all the directions. Something like this, I may do symmetry on the right side and the left side. I may not do it vertically or like I did it all 4 directions. You may just have left and right symmetry and that's what you do. That's the same thing, right? It's just a drone. That one's there too. Again, this one's left and right. There's no 4 propellers in that. That one's not even a drone. That's something else. That's cool. Like I said, keep it simple. Things like these are definitely possible. Having these blades flipping out and then like expanding and then being able to spin, that's something you could do, but keep it simple for your first one. You like something like this, okay? So if I wanted to do that, I would model it so that everything is out, and then if I have time, then I can worry about the animation of everything kind of collapsing and folding in on itself. Okay. Part of our animation will be done inside Cinema. That's pretty easy to do, but then the other part will be in KeyShot. It's easier to do, but you're limited in KeyShot to what you can do. It's basically like you're telling it what to move and how fast, but we can't go into like a graph and control individual elements. It's kind of limiting, but you'll see we're going to do both ways, just so you can get a handle on that. Same thing here, like I could do, left and right. I could model one of these, get it set up, and then rotate those into position. So it's not like I have to, keep all the pieces as one piece. Paper robot prototype. Sweet. And then that's the pictures. All right. All right, any other questions? Microphone's